I am back with another recommendation video. I've actually filmed this a couple of times and I'm just like never happy with it, but this is gonna be it. I'm not doing this again. And I also have a new filming setup, which is very precarious. You were actually on one of my cat crates and the cats are very curious about what is going on. So there may be a lot of cuts as I like intercede with cats. Also, I'm on a stool, which has no back support, and I'm really starting to regret that, but I don't really have another option right now. So we'll see. So today we're going to talk about small town romance. So small town romance is one of those things that I never think of as being a trope or a setting that I'm like, yes, that's like a must read for me. But I generally enjoy all the small town romance that I read. I am a sucker for like a cliche Hallmark movie, and I am a small town, I think hooliganism is about to start. I am a small town girly. I am not a city girly. I'm a small town, rural, like, person. That is 100% me. So first I kind of want to talk a little bit about what small town means to me when I'm thinking of a small town romance. So it is obviously a small town. Like, that's probably obvious, but you know, it has to be said. To me, it's a lot of times like maybe a little country, a little rural. Like to me, a lot of small towns are like down south or maybe in like the Pacific Northwest, even though obviously I live in New York and we have small towns here. They usually involve nosy neighbors. Think again, like Hallmark, Stars Hollow. I was like a casual Gilmore Girls watcher, not like a crazy 100% in person, but I think that's the vibe. And then often there are like quirky side characters. Also, a lot of small town romance has sequel bait, and I've talked about this before. I'm a huge sucker for sequel bait. Huge sucker. So let's get into some of the books that I would recommend. So the first one is, I would recommend the whole Winston Brothers series by Penny Reid, but I want to talk about Grin and Beard It specifically here, which is the second book, I believe. This one follows Sienna, who is an actress, and she comes to this small Tennessee town for a movie, and Jethro is a park ranger. And I do often like this dynamic where you have a character kind of coming from somewhere else, especially a big city, and coming into the small town and learning about this small town life and maybe what it brings. And I really like this story and how it talks about stuff like that, but also talks about like what sacrifices you're maybe making, things like that. I'm a huge Winston Brothers fan. Obviously, I talk about Cletus Winston probably too much, but this is one I really enjoy as well. The next is, I think, a little bit different kind of small town, and that is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. Now, I didn't love this book, but like Elliot Brooks, I think I can recommend books I don't love. So this is small town, but I do think Alaska, especially like remote Alaska stories, are kind of like a sub trope of small town romances, because I think a lot of times when you get into more rural, isolated settings, you can have different kinds of themes to explore, character types, but that's something I still really enjoy. I like the idea of people really coming to rely on each other, which you see a lot in places like Alaska or remote areas where, you know, like the hospital isn't even like a 15-minute drive down the road, it's a flight away. And I think that that creates an interesting dynamic, and that is one thing I really enjoyed about this story. And I know that this book is very popular. The next one is less romancy and more chick lit. So the romance isn't as prominent of a story point, but I still think it's a great small town romance, and that is The Undomestic Goddess by Sophie Kinsella. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Sophie Kinsella book. You have your main character and she makes a mistake at work and she just leaves London. And she ends up in this small town. She ends up being a housekeeper and pretending she is one for this like wealthy couple. And then she gets wrapped up in all of this stuff in this small like English country village town. And I really like how she grows and how she meets people and she learns more about herself and about how people interact. And the love interest's mom, her relationship with the main character is probably like my favorite thing in the movie. There's like a bread scene that just always It gives me, like, warms my heart. I love it. Next, because I talk about Sarina Bowen a lot, and I think I've talked about the True North books a lot, which are small town, but we're gonna go a little different and go with Good as Gold, which is the first book in the Guiltmaker series, which does take place in the world of True North. You see a lot of the same characters. We are just kind of leaving the Shipleys, and now we are following more of the Rossi family, who we have heard about. So here you have a family business involved. Actually, I think 2 family businesses. I was mainly thinking about the Guiltmakers, but I think they're both family businesses. And that's another thing I like about small towns, like the roots that are there, and then how that creates like a desire to continue your family legacy, and then the pressure of continuing your family legacy, and how different characters react to that and interact with that. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer with those things, but I think they are interesting things to address, and you definitely have that here. This is also like a second chance romance, but which I'm also a sucker for. And the last one is a historical romance, and that is A Night to Surrender by Tessa. This is the first book in her Spindle Cove series. I feel like I don't often think of historicals as having small town, but I think Spindle Cove is a great example of small town, especially this first one. There are a ton of spinsters. They live in Spindle Cove, all these women who are like trying to get away from things, and they grow and build a life here. And then in this first book, you have a guy come in, and there's a lot going on. But one of the things I really like about this series is there's just like gaggles of women, like doing crazy women things, and that is something that I love, like stereotypically about small town romances that you see in a lot of like Hallmark movies and stuff. And so as like little side bits, that's something I really enjoy. This book overall is very good. It's like 2 alpha characters, so if that's something you are interested in or you want to read, I mean, I'm a huge Tessa fan, but I just think this whole world is very interesting and is a nice little small town. If you have any historical small town recommendations, let me know, because I would be interested in it. But yes, so those are just some small town romances that I have enjoyed or I would recommend. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!